Hi everyone, it's November already and it's time for another Teaching Around the World Tag Series episode. So here I am in my yard showing you my liquid amber tree, which has become a feature each month, and you can see that the leaves are really growing back because it's well and truly spring. We've had some really hot days and summer's just around the corner. This tag has been fantastic and we've had so many people join in. It originally started with myself. I'm EJ Kafuppels and I'm representing Australia, New South Wales, Australia, the public school system from a high school perspective, and Nicholas from A Happy Teacher, A True Story over in France as we say, and also Alyssa from The Emerging Educator, and she's in USA. But we've had so many people join in and I'm going to try and link as many of those videos underneath this one as I can, and maybe even put some of their names across the screen, because if I say them all now I'll forget someone and then I'll feel bad. So this month's episode is all about behaviour. Behaviour is a funny thing, and classroom management is one of the main concerns of new teachers. First of all, I work for the Department of Education. I'm a public high school teacher, so our system has a code of conduct for teachers and it has a behaviour code, which I have here in my hot little hand, which I printed off at school today, which is a behaviour code for students. I might put an insert of this up on the screen because there's too many things for me to talk about right now. But what I love about this is that it's got a focus of respect, a focus on safety, and a focus on engagement. And back in the day when I first formulated my own classroom rules, and I'm not even lying, I actually had pretty much these three same categories in my list of rules. And it's still up on my classroom wall today, but I had respect, safety and work, which is the same idea as engagement. And so without realising it, I was totally in line with the department's policy. So I'm going to go ahead and answer the questions now, but just before I do, I want to say that classroom management, there are some things that are universal, but then just keep in mind that there are some things that depend on your specific situation and your individual students, your teaching style, your context. So just keep that in mind when you listen to the answers that I give you to these questions. First of all, it says, how does your school deal with misbehaviour? Well, our school has what we call a welfare policy, welfare system, and in that, which is pretty typical of many schools that I'm aware of, we have a level system. So students, if they misbehave, if they don't follow some of those procedures and protocols that are in place, which are based on these, then they might be placed on a level 1, for instance, and then they move up through the levels. In conjunction with that is a referral system. So for example, if a classroom teacher has difficulty with a student and they have tried to issue consequences at their level and it hasn't worked, or if the behaviour is more serious than what a classroom teacher needs to deal with, then that student will be referred to the head teacher of the faculty. And again, if that's more serious than the head teacher is supposed to deal with, then it gets referred to a deputy principal. In conjunction with that, we have an actual welfare system which supports students. We're lucky at our school, we have a welfare, or it's called wellbeing now, I should say, a wellbeing team that consists of several people, several teachers and support people, who some of those are year advisors, and they look at what's happening in the child's life and figure out how we can support them within a school context and try and help them manage their behaviour a little bit better. So consequences for misbehaviour are basically just detention. There are different kinds of detention. Normally, if a classroom teacher feels that the student needs a detention to help rectify their behaviour, or to even just have a chat with them, or to complete work that they have not completed in class, then that will happen at recess or lunch. And we don't like to keep the children for the entire recess or lunch break because they have rights too. They need to be able to have time to go to the toilet, have a drink, have a snack, have some food. So we only keep them for half of recess or half of lunch. With me personally, I try to avoid detentions if I can help it. I don't give detentions because I prefer to, I just prefer to have a peaceful kind of environment, and generally I do. I do detentions though, if I feel it's necessary. But again, I don't keep the kids for more than half of the break time. I don't do after school detention. Some teachers at my school do, but that has to be done in consultation with the head teacher of the faculty and with the family to make sure that it's going to be convenient and suitable for the family. Before I ever give a detention, I always give the child a chance to rectify their behaviour. I give warnings. I ask a lot of questions. I try and redirect them. I try and diffuse situations. I try and make my expectations clear so that everybody knows what they have to do in the lesson. Sometimes when none of those things work and I have threatened a detention and still the behaviour hasn't changed within the lesson, then I will need to send the student to the head teacher. Fortunately for me, I've been teaching for a long time now and we're towards the end of the year, so I've got really established relationships with my students. I don't really need to do that anymore. I have done it a couple of times throughout the year, but and I'm really fortunate as well where I work. I have a really supportive head teacher who is fantastic when it comes to discipline issues, and I've actually learned a lot from her as well, so I think that I incorporate some of her practices into my classroom. Can students be expelled from schools? Yes, students can be expelled from schools, however it's very last resort. Remember, I work in a public system, so our philosophy for education is that every child deserves to have the right to a free education, and so we will do everything in our power to avoid an expulsion. There are several steps leading up to expulsion. For example, there are several suspensions that have to take place. There are short suspensions and long suspensions, and there's the support network that I talked about before, you know, the wellbeing team, meetings with the family. All of that sort of stuff happens before we will expel a child. And I understand it's different in the private system. I have never worked in the private system, so I can't really comment on that, except that I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that they have more options when it comes to expulsions. I think the public school preferred method is to support students so that they can access that education that they're entitled to. Regarding consequences, with me personally, I try and keep consequences pretty natural to the behaviour that's been exhibited. For example, if the student has, for whatever reason, not completed the set work that I've given them for the lesson, then I will say to them, well, you'll need to come back in your own time, which is recess or lunch, and you'll need to complete it then. And that's really good because it gives you a chance to talk about why they couldn't do their work when it's one-on-one, when they can open up a little bit more. Maybe something's happening at home, maybe something out of their control has occurred, maybe they're just having an off day, and it gives them a chance to actually do that work that you need them to do. Also, the other thing is when they come in at recess or lunch, then you can actually give them one-on-one assistance with their work. Maybe they're struggling to access the work that's been given to them. And it may emerge then that they have some kind of learning difficulty or another issue that you can help them with. So my consequences, I try to make directly related to the crime, so to speak. Sometimes I'll require an apology. Sometimes I will require the students to speak to the student to speak to another student if it's like a mediation type thing, if there's been a dispute, I suppose. The responsibility of the teacher, as far as I see it, in the classroom is to teach the students. That's why we're there. So education, to keep students safe, to provide a safe environment for students to learn in, and to provide a fair environment for all students so that all students can access the learning that you're trying to provide for them. So all of my expectations and rules revolve around those sort of three key things, where I want the kids to learn something, I want them to do their work and to learn and to progress. I want them to be safe, I want everyone to be safe, I want them to show respect, and I want to provide a fair environment, a fair learning environment for everybody. The responsibility of the student in the classroom is to do their work, to follow teacher instructions, and that's assumed that the teacher instruction is reasonable, to be respectful to all people who come into the classroom, and to behave in a safe manner. So I have lots and lots of tips for classroom management. I've done a couple of videos on that already, and I might link one of them above my head right now, or to the side of my head. Not sure which side it goes. But basically, if I could sum it all up, remember, classroom management is a very complex and sometimes individualised thing. So just take what I'm saying with a little bit of that understanding. But in a nutshell, these are the essential items for classroom management. Establish a good rapport with students and develop a constructive and effective teacher-student relationship. That is key. Prevention is better than cure. If you can stop a behaviour occurring, if you can nip it in the bud, then it's better for everybody. Make your expectations clear. Where appropriate, use humour, and that can usually only occur once you've started to build a rapport with students. Don't back teenagers into a corner, and be mindful of what they're going through in their development. Diffuse situations. Keep your classroom as calm and peaceful as possible. And be consistent. Consistency is also key. Be as consistent as is humanly possible within those four walls of your classroom. I do have one more. And it's a golden rule. Treat the students how you would like to be treated. So speak to them the way that you would like them to speak to each other and to you. Be a role model in your behaviour, in your organisation, in your meeting of deadlines. Never expect them to do something that you wouldn't be willing to do yourself. That was the November episode of Teaching Around the World. If you've done a video and I haven't discovered it yet, please let me know in the comments. I would love to go and watch your video. And make sure that you check out the other videos, because some of these things are universal, but then again, some of them are quite individualised for different contexts. So it's going to be really interesting for me to watch everybody's videos. And if you're new on this tag series, welcome. It's great to have everybody represented. Even if your area and your country and your state has been represented, it doesn't matter. We'd still love to hear your individual perspective. So don't forget, the December one is coming up. I will link the questions underneath this video. If you'd like to take part in the December one, we'd love to have you on board. See you next time. Into my classroom management, classroom behaviour management, into my classroom.